Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Unbreakable. Today, we are talking about PTSD and CPTSD. So we need to give you a trigger warning. Some of the topics that we're going to discuss today may be too traumatizing for some people to listen to. So please use caution. And we hope that those of you who listen will take something away from this topic. For now, though, Elle is going to describe the difference between PTSD and CPTSD because, for myself, I didn't even know CPTSD existed. So what is the difference, Elle?
Okay, hi. So the differences are, well, here we go. PTSD, as we are most familiar with, is a result of an acute trauma, which means like one or a few, such as combat trauma, witness to a death, being in a natural disaster, or a car accident, for example.
Mm-hmm.
CPTSD, on the other hand, is a result of repetitive and prolonged trauma, such as ongoing physical abuse, sexual abuse, and or neglect, that is often experienced in childhood, but can also be introduced in domestic violence and abuse, exploitation, etc. in adulthood.
So that's actually a big difference. That's actually a big difference.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it really is. And a lot of people don't even realize that PTSD exists. So they think, well, I don't have PTSD. There's something wrong with me. Yeah.
Right. Because it doesn't fit that general definition.
Exactly.
So, because I have a friend who, lost a family, fire, lost her house to a fire and all that stuff. So she would qualify under PTSD, but reading the rest of it, she doesn't even know that she has CPTSD. And I'm sure that the therapy is more intense, I would think. Just as a guess.
I would guess so too.
I'm the same way. I didn't realize I had CPTSD, but I definitely have CPTSD other than PTSD. For some reason, they haven't diagnosed it like that. But.
Right. So hopefully right there, we're helping people with just the definition,
Definitely.
So, Kay, if you are so kind, if you are willing to share what caused your PTSD.
CPTSD.
I'm sorry, CPTSD.
It's okay. I'm learning to say it, so.
Good job.
Well, so first of all, CPTSD talks about repetitive and prolonged trauma. So just really quickly, I was raised by a narcissistic parent. I was abandoned. I lived on the streets and I was homeless. After that, I was in a domestic violence situation with my boyfriend. After that, I reconnected with my narcissistic parents, my father, and my terrible relationship with my mother at the time. And then I was in another terribly abusive situation, which ended with the police saving me from, almost being murdered. So that right there is kind of in a nutshell what's happened. But for my first time that I really feel like it started was with my narcissistic father, who from the moment I think I was born, knew that he was doing this, would tell me things that would make me hurt so badly about my mom that I honestly went through childhood feeling like I was hated. For example, my father told me that my mother wanted to commit suicide because she was so upset that she had a girl and didn't want a girl. She wanted a boy.
Oh my God.
At another point, my father asked me if I wanted to be adopted because I was causing problems in their relationship. And so it would be better for me to leave the house, and that my mother wanted me gone. So
that's horrible.
during this time, I was also sent to my room a lot. Like my family would say, "How come Kimberly's always in her room? Why don't you ever let her come out, especially when we're visiting?" And they kind of set my room up like, yeah, I had a phone in my room, I had a TV in my room, and of course, all my friends were like, "Oh my God, you're so lucky." But for me, it was like a prison, and I was really isolated, and I was really neglected, and I was really depressed. Like I cried a lot as a child. So I think that's what started it. And then when me and my father reconnected later, and believe me, there was a lot more to the story, but I'm not going to like go deep into it. But when I reconnected with my father later, uh, just for an example, we went on a family trip. We thought, oh, wouldn't it be nice if we all went on a family trip? Because we used to love that. And so we went on this family trip. And while we were there, my father took me to the grocery store so we could pick up some items. And there was a jeweler that we passed. And he said, "I think we should stop there so I can get a ring." And I'm like, okay, And he told me that the ring wasn't for my mother, it was for a woman that he knew at work. And that he wanted to leave my mother and give the ring to this woman and said, your mother doesn't care anyway, that kind of thing. But for the longest time, I believed him because of everything that he told me. I honestly hated my mother. I did. I hated her. And so later on, when we found all this out that it wasn't true, my mother said, because I said, "I'm so sorry I didn't tell you when I was younger." And she said, "Why would you? You were the victim of abuse. That's abusive. What kind of person does that? What kind of person makes sure that, you're not going to love your mother and your mother's going to think that you're a problem?"
Right.
I'm sorry. I said reconnected. Let me back up just a tiny bit. So the most important thing, this is what really, really got me. So when I was 14 years old, my parents were having really bad issues. And my father, who is the CEO of a company, also decided to get back into drugs because he was a drug addict before he met my mother. And so, for example, one day I got home from school and there was a guy sitting on the couch and he had a briefcase open and it was full of coke. And my father screamed at me to get out of the room and to go upstairs. And I was just like, "No, I'm leaving." And I went out the front door and my dad like chased me down the street, dragged me back, punched me in the face. And a couple days later, we were driving in the car. My parents were fighting, and my dad punched out the windshield and threatened my mother. So I got out of the car and I just ran. When my father finally got to his top level of craziness because he was losing control, and narcissists tend to like really freak out when they lose control. My father got a gun and he went to the office where my mom worked. They actually shared an office together. She had to put her desk in his office. He went to work with a gun and pointed the gun at her and threatened to kill her. So the police picked him up and put him in jail. And my mother decided that she was going to go back to the East Coast where her family lived and basically left me there by myself. My father then, who was released from jail, said, "You can't come home. It's part of my probation. You're not allowed to live with me," which, looking back on it now, that's total bull. So basically at that point, I learned from some kids that I knew on the street that you could get into these Greyhound buses at the Greyhound bus station. So I would go there, and there was a couple of guys that were nice enough to kind of watch out for me and put me in the way back, and I would just sleep there. And then, like, we would go to different places. Like, how if you go to McDonald's or something, you're like, "You forgot something in my bag," and they'll just give it to you.
Right.
So I used to do that just to eat. And I was approached by prostitutes, and I mean, there's a lot of things that I could have done to go down a really dark path. But for some reason, I just knew not to do that. I just knew, but I did get into a lot of situations where I put my life in danger many times. And so it just got worse and worse and worse. It snowballed like it tends to do. But I think that right there was like a pivotal moment in my life of my father building me up to this moment and then just both of them just discarding me like I meant nothing and abandoning me and just basically saying, I was the root of all their issues. Like, what? you know?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So that's basically in a nutshell my story.
Wow.
That's a lot to take on.
It is. And like when you're on the street too, I'm sure everybody knows that it's really dangerous. So, I mean, I was sexually assaulted. There were things that happened. So, I mean, and of course, my parents blame me for the situation. Like my parents said that I was the reason that their relationship broke up. So neither of them wanted to talk to me. They got back together, of course, and then neither of them wanted to talk to me. So I was sending all these letters to my mother, just trying to say, "Hey, why is this happening?" And my father would say things to me like, "Yeah, we're getting the letters in the mail. Please don't send those anymore. Your mother wants nothing to do with them. She's ripping them up and throwing them away." Well, I found out later my mom never got them. She never got the letters.
So he was ripping them up and throwing them away.
Right, exactly. And he was making me completely dependent on him for any relationship. And then, of course, he'd give me money every so often, just to keep me like talking. And narcissists are the worst because, especially to children, they really damage like everything you think about yourself, your family, and they really ruin like how you have future relationships with other people because you don't know what's normal. Like you really don't.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's me.
That's
right? Yeah.
Wow. You are amazingly strong. That's all I can say about that.
Well, thank you.
You are strong. Yes, it's a lot to take on.
Yeah, and I mean, it took a lot to build myself back up and realize it wasn't my fault. Lots of therapy. So, definitely therapy, guys.
Yes, oh my goodness.
Yeah. Okay, so we are so lucky that Angie Roberts has decided to come back and join us again. And she's also going to talk about her experience with CPTSD. So, Angie, why don't you let us know again how that started for you and maybe tell us a little bit more about, how it's affecting your life.
Okay, so kind of like my timeline of how I ended up with CPTSD instead of PTSD was my parents who I had a perfect, in quotations, family for a very long time, which I thought was perfect. It was not perfect, but I thought my family was perfect. And then my oldest sister, I guess I should say, my parents are 25 years apart. So my oldest sister on my dad's side, so she was a lot older than me. She ended up passing away of cancer. And that kind of started a snowball of things that happened just within our family. And then by the time that I turned 14, I had started being molested and by an older gentleman. A lot of my teenage years, I was with a lot of older gentlemen because of what that gentleman had done. I guess they're not really a gentleman, but and then I think bullying all the way through school, like it was horribly bad bullying. And then I was in a domestic violence situation. My best friend was in a domestic violence situation, which she kind of had involved me in, and she ended up dying. So that was the last thing that has really happened that has I think given me the the ending the ending
I'm so
part.
sorry.
So sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. She was a sweet woman.
Mhm.
But so going back and talking about what started all of my um, trip through CPTSD was my dad. Okay, my sister got cancer and she ended up passing away. And my dad did not take that so well. It seemed like he had some kind of mental break, and a psychologist have told me that I was, or psychiatrists have told me I was pretty much right calling it a psychotic break of some sort without them knowing the whole details. They can't really say, but he did not remember what happened during this period of time. So that's why but I didn't know. My family was, I had a little perfect family, and my parents were married, and there were other parents around me, friends. The parents are getting divorced, but I was proud of my family because my parents were together, and I had no want to smoke a cigarette. I mean, in my mind, I wasn't having sex before marriage. I wasn't doing this. I was doing great in school. And then this happened, and it was kind of like my whole life fell apart. My grades went way down, and my dad went so far as when he was abusive to us, my mom and I. And then when I told him that we were going to leave, my mom and I finally talked about what was going on, and she's like, "Okay, so if he does these things, let me know." So my mom told me that if my dad abused her or myself again, that we would leave, and I agreed to. I didn't want to leave my dad because I was a daddy's girl. My dad had actually built me kind of around up to not like my mom. My dad would do different, you know what I mean? Like if my mom punished me for something, might get on to her actually. So he had, it was overbearing for me. It really was, especially at my age. I think this was when I was about 12 years old, 12, 13-ish. I know sometimes it's hard to remember your age. Lo and behold, it did happen. My dad got upset with me for something, and he hit me. He had pushed me on my bed and hit me. And I told him that I was calling my mom. Well, he said that he was going to shoot her windshield out. And so I was freaking out, but I did still call my mom. And then I ran off so that he couldn't find me and waited and called the police. So that situation happened.
Good for you.
Yeah. I mean, I was scared. I was so scared,
Yeah.
And then I felt bad for having to call the police, and they detained him until we could get the stuff that we needed to leave. But that night, I was so scared for my mom that my mom was going to get shot that my mom told me I wouldn't let her sleep near the window. So for a 12-year-old to feel that way and to take that responsibility on, like I said, Mom, he won't shoot me. I'm scared he'll shoot you. And I knew my dad wouldn't shoot me. He wouldn't kill me. You know what I mean? I knew that. So, I felt the need to protect her. And then my dad started stalking us, and he started, my mom worked at a Walmart, and he started stalking her, and would stalk her when she was at work and after work, and he would stalk us on the way to school. And so how am I supposed to be concentrating in school? I can't do anything. I'm starting to get bad grades. I'm starting to get in confrontations with people. I'm being bullied all through this. I've been bullied since I was in kindergarten. So, it was a really horrible time. But my dad finally, he did come out of it, and he didn't remember anything that happened. But my mom and I suffered very heavily at the hands of that because my mom loved him very much. They even ended up back together before, before he passed away. So because we realized that he didn't know, what was going on. When we kind of felt bad that we realized he didn't know what was going on, we couldn't get him help. But, all of those things for a younger girl to have to deal with and to be a daddy's girl, it was just horrible. And it was a lot.
Yeah, I'm sure it
The
was.
stalking was really a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
And then when it falls apart, it's like you've lost the person you just trusted the most in your life.
Yeah, I mean, I can relate to what you're saying because I think around 12 years old is when my dad started to get weird with me too, like even worse. And because a part of that is like you're finally,
right? Yeah,
I don't know, developing and becoming a woman and changing the way you are a bit. And like for my father though, like
right?
I was a daddy's girl all growing up. He made sure of that. So yeah, I get it. When I lost all of that, it just crushed me to have him say you can't come home. So I get it. I'm so sorry you went through that. Did they ever figure out how he didn't remember?
It was just a part of his psychotic break. Elle, what about you?
So unfortunately for me, my first introduction into CPTSD was through my stepbrother. Let's call him Donald. And he was 14. I was 2. I have vivid memories of things that I shouldn't, especially at that age. This went on for till the age of 4. It turned out that he went after both of all 3 of us, both of my sisters as well. My parents finally found out, and because who would suspect that kind of thing among family? And they initially found out just about my 2 sisters and not me. Donald and my oldest sister decided to tell my parents on Mother's Day that I was also being abused by my stepbrother.
So they knew that the others were too before
Yes.
that, or
Yes.
Okay.
My oldest sister knew pretty much everything. So of course, as soon as that was found out, our family was completely splintered. So thankfully, my parents decided to go and see if we could get counseling, which back then didn't even really exist, especially for children, But unfortunately, because Donald and my eldest sister were considered adults in the state of Pennsylvania, they could refuse treatment. And until this day, they both have not sought any treatment or paid any pittance, really. The only thing that Donald really had to do was pay for my counseling. He had to leave. He didn't get his high school diploma because he had to get a job to pay for my counseling. Sorry, I'm not empathetic to that. He could have always went and got his GED. It took away any ideals of security for the rest of my life. Because if you don't feel comfortable, if you don't feel safe with your family, if you don't feel safe with someone you trust, whatever it may be, so it feeds into a lot of, the other things like the abandonment issues and stuff like that.
Right.
So, and of course, unfortunately for me, that was not the only time I was sexually abused, but that was the first. And like I said, I have vivid memories. I can remember the carpet that led up, down the stairs to his basement in his bedroom in the basement. I can remember that carpet so vividly.
Do you not like to go to basements now?
I'm okay with that, but like if it was the same type, like the same type of carpet, if I were to see that same type of carpet or pattern,
Right.
I probably freak out because it's just ingrained.
Right. Oh, I agree.
There are other ones, but it's definitely not things that I could talk about on here.
Yeah.
But those kind of
That's
moments
okay.
where they're ingrained. They're not going anywhere. The only thing you can do is get treatment and figure out how to help yourself through it and coping skills and all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And that's what PTSD or CPTSD does. It ingrains it in your brain. It makes a circle, a loop where it goes over and over. It actually changes your brain, the way your brain looks. So it changed you. And that's what a lot of people don't understand with PTSD, or a lot of, well, maybe a lot of listeners, maybe, or whoever, that it actually changes it. And so therefore, it's harder to, what am I trying to say?
You can't just get over it. You can't just get over it.
Yeah.
And then your brain starts to perceive things in a completely different way because it's been altered.
Yeah.
It's been permanently altered.
Right,
Absolutely.
exactly.
The person that you could have been, and that's what I mourn sometimes. I think you can agree with me. I think the person I could have been was gone, had no chance. For me, at 2 years, that person could never exist because of what happened.
Oh, absolutely. I can completely relate to that. Yeah.
I mean, I'm grateful for the person I have become despite everything and because of everything, but the reality is you're left to wonder when you have PTSD or CPTSD, you're always left to wonder, what would I have truly been like had I been given the opportunity, at least for myself.
Yeah.
See, I just realized something about a year ago that has me in that beginning stages. I feel like a year is still the beginning stages because it just uproots your life. You know what I mean? And that was when I realized that the first man that manipulated me and groomed me and did everything to make me feel safe at 14 years old when he was a 29-year-old man. Some people might think that I'm not intelligent for realizing this at, I was 39. But it was just when you're manipulated, when your mind is manipulated that much, you're brainwashed. And when you're brainwashed, you don't always realize things.
Right.
Even though even though I'm like, if you would have told me about another 29-year-old man and a 14-year-old girl, I've been like, oh, that's disgusting and he needs to pay for it in jail. But if that didn't ever, do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So it's always easy looking in. It's like with domestic violence, there's so many people who are like, why doesn't she leave? Why doesn't she leave? And for me, I literally had to have the cops buzz down the door, arrest him, put him in jail, and I needed to be away from him for a good hardcore 6 months before.
Well, you had to go to the hospital.
Right.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, sometimes we are stubborn. We don't, we don't see it for whatever reason.
Right.
Or we make excuses for so long. And sometimes it's too late, Thankfully for us, that didn't happen. But we all have our limit, I think, is what it is. And we all have our opportunities to open our eyes, and it's up to us.
Right. And sometimes people are good enough to try to tell us that we don't listen, like you said, and we get defensive. And we really need to think about not only like, okay, is that my behavior, but why is that behavior my behavior? And then that leads you to your answer. That leads you to what you need to know. Because sometimes you don't realize things happen.
Right.
You don't even realize it. And until you really start thinking about it.
And I mean, a lot of times when you go through this stuff, there's so much isolation involved. I was just thinking
Yes.
about everything I just talked about and how isolated I really was. So,
Well, who do you relate to? That's the thing. Who
yeah.
relates to you? Who do you relate
Right.
to? Nobody. Nobody's going to possibly understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, so I think that's like the most dangerous part. We really need to try to figure out how, I mean, as a mental health community, we need to figure out how to give teenagers, kids, adults, all of us, a way to break out of that isolation. And that's hard to do when you're already feeling like nobody wants you or understands you or is going to listen to you. So,
And like in Angie, in my case, we were bullied anyway in school. So it's like, oh yeah, that's just one more thing that's going to set us apart. That's just what we need.
Right. Yes. And then, my parents really taught me to, like, if you don't respond to the bullies, then they will leave you alone, which is not always true. Which is most likely not always true, but that's what they thought back then. You know what I mean? And no, I ended up being one of those people, and still today I have an issue with not speaking up. But when I speak up, I'm explosive. You know what I mean? I've taken so much that I can't take it no more. And it comes from, I feel like it comes from that. But I was not supposed to say anything. I'm not supposed to do anything to make the bully mad. You know what I mean?
I think I do the same thing. And I think it was because my father taught me not to rock the boat,
Right. My mom taught me not to rock the boat. Yeah.
Well, and in my case, it was a religious upbringing, so it was women are supposed to be submissive. So,
right, and they have a very interesting look on submissive.
Yes, yeah, very.
So, well, ladies, I feel like this was a really good talk. I think people will really relate.
And it's been great having you here again because you're
Thank you so much.
You're always like such a great advocate for. I know I tell you this all the time, but you're such a great advocate for mental health issues, and I really do hope more people learn to look you up and listen to what you have to say because I know that you are just going to continue to contribute to this because that's who you are. So, Angie Roberts, you guys.
Yay, thank you again. We hope you come back again. I'm sure you'll be back again, but
I'm sure. And I appreciate you guys putting me on the air because I'm, just trying to get started out with breaking out of my shell of Facebook talking to people about mental illness. So,
well, we are happy to help you do that.
Very happy.
I appreciate it. And I just appreciate that you guys are doing this podcast, though. It reaches people with chronic illnesses and other things. They need to feel like they're not alone. And I feel like that you guys always sound very sincere. And I think that you do a great job.
Well, thank you so much. That means a lot.
Thank you so much, Angie, for sharing your story. We really, really appreciate it. And we're so glad you came back, and we hope to get to see you again soon.
We know it was a hard topic, but thank you so much. Okay, so moving on. The question of the week. This one's good. I think we need to talk about this actually. How do you feel about people starting to ignore the COVID safeguards in public places?
I find that to be extremely ignorant, selfish, and ridiculous.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
Inexcusable. Maddening. I think it could come with a lot of adjectives. So
I'm a little harsher on this topic, but I'm just going to be honest. There are a lot of people, I'm on Facebook a lot, and there are a lot of people who think that this whole thing is a hoax.
Oh my God, those people.
Those people. Like, what is wrong with you people? Like, seriously. But anyway, I know people whose friends have died, and they're all like, do you know anybody who's died? Obviously not, because it's not true. It's just a way of the government to control you. I'm not going to wear a mask. Meanwhile, people are dying. and it's going into younger and younger age groups. And this illness could get stronger and resistant to treatment. We've got people on ventilators that are not making it. And I think many of you who are refusing to wear a mask, you need to actually look up what a ventilator is truly like, because it is devastating what somebody goes through when they're on a ventilator, and traumatizing for them. Imagine having a tube shoved down your throat. You have pain meds and sedation, but you know what's going on. You have this machine helping you breathe. You're laying there, usually on your stomach, believe it or not. That's it. You are like that until either A, you survive it, or B, you die. And you're by yourself because your family cannot come and visit you. And you don't want to wear a mask? Like, you can't even do that? It really upsets me. It's so selfish.
It's so selfish and ignorant, and it's just everything. It's like nobody has any respect or thinks about anything beyond themselves.
Exactly. I mean, Florida is an epicenter right now. We're getting so horrible here. I know other states are getting bad too.
Arizona is getting like crazy as well. California.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's because people have decided, well, we're kind of sick of this now. It's done with. I'm going to leave my house and do what I want. I need to get my hair done. I need to go to lunch. I'm just tired of this. And I mean, a lot of people, like the president, is more concerned about businesses that are going under.
The economy.
And I understand that. I do. I understand. I could imagine being somebody who spent their last dime to open a small, shop that is now going under because of this. But I mean, there are people who are dying. This is real. This is not a hoax.
This is not a movie.
Nope. Need to take it seriously. Stay in your house. Do not go out. If you have to go out, do pick up for your groceries. Wear a mask. Make sure you put the.
You're washing your hands as much.
Yeah, wash your hands. I mean, I see people doing all this stuff, and then they're touching their phones and they're touching their faces, and it's like, don't do that.
No, exactly right.
Cleanse.
I mean, I don't, not to sound germophobic, but at this point, when I come home, anything that I take with me, I take a sanitary wipe or whatever, and I pretty much just wipe everything down.
Mm-hmm.
Mask goes in the washer, whatever.
Exactly.
Because it's too many people don't care.
If I go and I get groceries, I have sanitizer in my car. I rub my hands down. I rub the steering wheel.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who have, like, I have a child who has diabetes. If my child were to get sick with COVID, it's already been said that people with diabetes have a very small chance of survival. Like, for them, it's the worst for some reason. So, that's something that I have to worry about every day. And there's a large population that's saying, you can't tell me what to do. I don't have to wear a mask. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's just like, anyway.
Well, for me, it's like you just want to walk up to them, and it's like you don't know anybody who's old. You don't know anybody with diabetes or heart condition or asthma.
Yeah.
You don't care about anybody. Like, really?
Yeah.
And that's a nice way to put it, but it just really infuriates me when people with absolute, just outright disregard do not care.
Get it together. Get it together, people.
Yeah. It's not just you. We're fighting for it,
And also, think about your children, because you're bringing your kids to the store. None of you are wearing masks. They're touching everything. They're being children. Leave your kids at home. I mean, Come on. Use your common sense.
Yeah. Please.
Anyway.
Yeah. Okay. We could go a whole topic on that
I'm sure
alone.
people are not going to like what we had to say, but that's what it is, guys. Sorry.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the topic for next week, Kay,
Mm-hmm.
is trauma and chronic illness. So kind of ties into this week. So it should be interesting.
So that would be how trauma like affects chronic illness, or if it causes it, kind of thing.
Correct.
Oh, awesome!
Like, yes. Mm-hmm.
That'll be great. That'll be great.
Yeah, I think it'll be very informative.
I think so too. So the final thoughts for today is that PTSD and CPTSD, it's not the person refusing to let go of the past, but the past refusing to let go of the person.
So very true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
Very, very true.
yeah, we need to remember that about people who are struggling.
Right.
Have compassion.
A little compassion goes a long way.
It sure does. So with that,
we will say goodbye for now.
Mm-hmm.
And remember,
you are not alone. Bye, guys.
Bye.
We hope that you've enjoyed this episode of Unbreakable. If you'd like to connect with us, we've made it easier. We are now a part of Anchor, so you can find us at anchor.fm/unbreakable. There you can find different ways that you can listen, and you can also find links to our social media pages. We're on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So there's lots of ways that you can connect with us, ask us your questions that we might use on our podcast, and just say hi. Elle and I would both love to hear from you. Take care.